host 2 batches a year. One in the winter batch and one in the summer batch, and we invest $50K for 5%. And really, the program is 10 weeks long, and this really encompasses both of the best worlds. We have Lee here, and he did YC back in the day. He'll give a quick intro later, and I've been in the accelerator space for quite a while. This is the whole team. Yipeng is actually not here tonight, but Seamon's here, and Lee is here. They're one of the 2 partners that run this accelerator with me, and I'm the program director. So, a little bit about me is, like I said, I've been in this space, accelerator space, for a while. I ran the first one. My first accelerator experience was actually at XRC Labs. I'm pretty sure some of you guys heard of them, at Parsons School of Design. And I worked in startups and like food subscription based and also SaaS companies as well. And what I do on the side as well, besides my full-time job, like I said, is run a meetup group called Japan University Startups, and we have over 1,800 members. Nick, who's presenting tonight, he's been to my conferences that I hold like once a year. It attends like 300 people. So I'm really glad he came back and was, thanks, Nick. And so, just being part of that community is really important. And for Lair's Lab, what we offer to startups is one of the top 5 things we offer is the community and alumni network. Our prototype days, which are really fun because this is the days where you pitch to us, and every week you're supposed to iterate and be better, and the partners will give you their feedback. And the round table expert dinners is Opler has actually been a part of. He gave a talk about CTOs and running a company when you're CTO. So he's been really instrumental in helping our companies. I think, can everyone hear me, or am I?
Yeah, no, nice and loud.
I think it's okay.
Sit down. Anybody?
It's okay. I don't want my voice blasting so loud. And we have coaching from a lot of our mentors and our founders as well. And actually, Alex is here he just graduated from Winter Bachelor. He's able to give his side of the story, which he wants to share. And so. He's at several companies. He's from Web to Ship. They're all in different verticals. And actually, one I noticed. I don't know why the spot's so tiny, but anyway, Hope Blue from the first batch. She went to raise about $20 million plus after our first accelerator, and she's in the blockchain industry, and she's been listed. She's one of the few female founders in this space, and it's been really, really great for her. She's all over the news and blockchain, cryptocurrency, and she gives talks in all over Southeast Asia, East Asia as well. So she's been really fantastic. Some of the highlights of our program is, obviously a lot of our companies are in different verticals, and so we're really open to talking to companies from all different industries. And 4 of our companies that we've taken in, they're all currently operating in both the U.S. and the Asia market within really a year and a half of Lair's Labs. We just started only a year and a half ago. And combined together, they've raised over $27 million in venture funding. So we're really proud of them. And something I'm really, really proud of is 6 out of 8 companies have won the multi-founders. And that's something I'm really, really passionate about. So we are looking for our companies for the next batch. So if you're interested in, applying, talk to me afterwards. And yeah, let's get started into our panel discussion. All right, thanks, everyone. So, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. And you guys have microphones, right?
Yep, we do.
Yeah, use the mics if you don't mind, because we're taping this, so it's better if you use the mics. Please.
Got it. No, my mic's underneath my chair.
Yeah.
Usually I'm loud enough.
I know,
But everyone else?
because we're
Okay,
recording,
okay.
so go ahead, use it.
Great.
Got it.
So, all right.
Just make sure the green light is on your mic.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello. Hello. All right, I'll try my best to speak louder. question. And thank you, China Institute, for hosting us. And obviously, we wanted to help bridge the U.S. and the China here. So that's sort of our focus and theme for tonight. What are the greatest challenges for foreign startups trying to make it in the U.S. and China? And I know some of you guys are more focused in the U.S. and we're more focused in China. So I would really love your thoughts on
Yeah, so besides Lair's Labs, like I also run a venture capital firm called Convened Capital. So we invest in a lot of U.S. companies and help them on the China side. And before I was an Inside Venture Partners, and Inside I was involved in the JD.com and Alibaba transactions, and then it was helping more like kind of like the Chinese companies like look at like U.S. expansion. So kind of like have some experience on both sides. I think one of the biggest challenges is I think it's very important to kind of like find the right partner, like if you enter like the markets, because I know some companies they try to like kind of hire their own team and try to do it themselves, and then they try to like and then like a lot of them fail. And especially like there's a lot of U.S. companies trying to do it in China, and they have to like retreat. And now we're seeing this a little bit with the Chinese companies entering the U.S. Like you have to kind of like get the right partner involved with the right resources, like government connections, and kind of like build up the right team. You can try to hire people as well, but it's a lot easier if you work with a partner that has a local team already. So that's why for us when we do joint ventures, it's very like we think the original company, the parent company should own maybe a minority share in the venture, and then get the local partners and the local team like involved. I think that's a good way to have a venture succeed. And I also see like there's lots of people making investments as well, like because it's harder for them to like operate in the new market. So a lot of them will just make investments, and some of them have been very successful making investments, but less like operating. So that's from my experience. I don't know if you guys want to add.
One thing we didn't do is actually introduce the panelists.
Oh yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, sorry. 30-second quick. Sorry about that. Yeah. So if you're about to speak, please do it. Yeah.
I'm glad I just volunteered myself to come back.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so my name is Lee, and as Jennifer mentioned, I'm one of the partners at Lair's Labs. My background's kind of interesting because I've been an entrepreneur that's seen both complete extremes of the startup landscape, where I participated in Y Combinator with my startup in summer 2009, and that was when YC was this small thing that nobody heard of, but having been through that community, you see startups getting pushed all the way towards the VC and fundraising and raise a whole bunch of money and burn a whole lot of money spectrum. But the flip side of the story is that the startup I was doing, plus the environment at the time, 2009, shortly after the financial crisis, it was actually very impossible for most startups to fundraise, including many in our batch, but we were able to actually bootstrap all the way to profitability through a very, very long and tough road. So I guess tonight, when we do the panels and later the pitches, I guess I'll be focusing really on both angles of can this company fundraise sometime soon, or can they get enough traction to be profitable and actually take the bootstrapping route. And so in a lot of ways, I like being the advice or the voice of the road not taken. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Alex. I'm from Web2Ship. I'm one of the portfolio company for Lair's Lab for just recent batch. So the reason I'm here to share about my experience is Web2Ship was actually, my company actually expanding from Malaysia to China in 2013. So I have a company, I run a company in China and also in Thailand in 2016. So this year we are in US. So I will be able to share with you how to actually expand a business in different countries. So yeah.
Can you sit?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Arthur. I'm Arthur 2, and so I'm the technical co-founder of 2 educational startups. The first one's called LearnBop, which sell math learning software to schools, and the second one is called Elemental Path, which created this little dinosaur. Think of it as like Siri for kids that tells stories and teach them mathematics. So that's my background, and actually my first company was a Dream Adventures company, so I'm dreaming along. Yeah, and right now I'm currently a mentor at Lair's Labs, so I'm happy to be here.
And
Yeah, quick on my background. So I was born in the U.S. and I went to middle school and high school in China, and then came back to college. And I was trying to serve as a bridge between U.S. and China. So in college, I was doing like organizing the student conferences, and then organize students to visit Chinese startups. Like back then, like a lot of MBAs, Stanford MBAs, and engineers, and we were visiting like Tencent when they were like still pretty on the smaller side, and typically like we organized a lot of those trips during college. And then back in New York, I started organizing like the New York City's Chinese Entrepreneurs Organization, where like we hosted a lot of the Chinese founders and tech companies when they come and visit New York. And we grew to almost like 2,000 people. And the Stanford one has been thriving as well. That one has like 4,000. So a very strong network of alumni and members, like both in US and China. And then we've been also helping some of the companies like get started, like incubate them like back to China. So WeLab is an example, a company that we helped like do my partner in the league. Big One Lab and Mealtech, so some of the from Stanford or some of the founders in New York as well. So that's why we started to think about like making it more like systematic, and that's how we started all these adding more structure and adding more resources and mentors like to the program, so we could have a whole class instead of just like incubating like 7 employees one at a time. So
Right. I mean, Tim from the Big One Lab was really the inspiration behind Lair's labs. You know, I think he was in computer batch 0, but he literally came to us with just an idea and said, I'm going to go to China and start something. And he didn't know what he was going to do, but he had worked with the data, right? And he wanted to do something similar there, I believe. And he's doing really well now. He's up to 20 employees and has raised a good Series A. So we'll continue to give him help.
Yeah, we actually got the companies like to visit him like last
time.
We
helped mentor our first batch of them, And so going back to the panel discussion, I know Seamon already answered, but do you guys have any, you know, what are the other challenges for you think startups in China versus here? I think author wants to.
Well, I can share some of my experience. So even though I have this accent, I'm actually a third culture kid. I was born in the US, but I was raised in Asia. So I spent 14 years in Taiwan, 2 years in China. And one thing I noticed when I started my first company in Pittsburgh, so I went to Carnegie Mellon, that's why I was in the Midwest, and then moving over to New York, I think one thing that international founders run into is getting used to the networking culture in the US, especially if you're Asian. Because if you grew up in Asia, one thing is that people don't really network as much. You usually connect people through the organization that you're already in, whether it's family, whether it's through your company, then you connect to clients, but then you don't go to like an event with a bunch of strangers and then just talk to them. It's not as common. But then over here, that's like the most important skill that you need to acquire, otherwise you'll never find people you want to meet. So that was, I think that was one of the biggest hurdles for me, that having to get used to that, okay, I have to practice how to just walk up to a stranger, introduce myself, and say, hey, as opposed to, here's my cousin, like telling me, hey, go meet this person, here's a number. It's a very different culture. And I think that's, sometimes there's a little bit of confusion. People think, oh, why aren't people introducing people to me? But then over here, it's like you have to go out to networking events.
I totally agree with it. I mean, as a foreign international founders, I think one of the most challenging issues is that you have no connections, local connections. So most of the time you need to cold introduction, it doesn't work. You need a warm introductions. So that's one of the biggest challenge. So actually, I think that's why accelerator makes sense. You have a lot of resources, help you to connect to other local connections, which is very difficult for foreign startup founders, because you go there, you just don't have any connection, you don't know anybody. You just try to email someone, cold email. It may not work most of the time. And also, of course, the startup events, you need to mingle with the startup networking. You need to spend some time on it to understand the startup, how the startup doing things over here and compared to other countries.
No,
we don't need the screen.
No, we don't need the screen.
All right.
So people can see.
Okay.
Lee, if you have any input on no, the next question.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, sure.
Well, because you were talking a lot about coming to the West, right? But what do you do if you're going into China and you don't have any Chinese cousins and you want to, but there's not the same networking culture that we have here, so then what do? You want to go take your company to China, how do you?
A little bit. I guess, I think that's where we try to help with the accelerator. Because it's like Wu Chen from Big One Lab, when he was getting started, he didn't have a team, he didn't have a product, he didn't have a business plan, it was just him. And then we introduced him to lots of we're referring to my previous point about finding good local partners, which includes investors. So introduced him to lots of investors locally and Gen Fund, which is a pretty strong angel fund in China, ended up investing in his company. So then they brought over a lot of the local connections, and of course we have a strong network with Stanford. There's a lot of people starting companies there. So we were able to introduce him to a lot of the founders and investors, and also a lot of customers, customers who would buy his product. So that's one of the benefits of doing the accelerator Lair's Labs. If you're ready for China, go to China, then we'll connect you to a lot of people there. But even if you're staying here, then you get a lot of Chinese investors and a lot of Chinese founders come here as well, and we're able to connect them, and they're swinging by our space, and we just meet them casually. So so that's one of the benefits that we offer here.
Yeah, that almost sounds like a planted question, right? But I promise it wasn't. But no, that is one of the main purposes of the accelerator. A lot of entrepreneurs here in the US are a little bit scared to navigate what they consider to be either a tricky legal structure or a structure where if you don't have connections, it's going to be hard. But the truth is, a lot of companies or even governments there are actually very, very happy to host and welcome entrepreneurs and technology companies. And it's just kind of knowing how to be introduced to the right people. That's exactly one of the things that our accelerator and a lot of investors actually want to help too.
So this is to be more general question for the startups. What are the attributes of the most successful startups you've seen? Seamon, you invest in a lot. And what are the most common mistakes that companies make? Can you give some examples? I mean, all of you guys come from such different backgrounds, right? So.
Yeah, I talk about from the investor point of view, and then you guys say the founder point of view. I think when starting a company, it's very important to kind of be able to break it down into many steps, including even just getting started. You don't have to really some people say, I have to quit my job or just have to start a company. There's lots of steps to get there. So some people even recommend working for an early stage startup, 5, 10, 20 people, or 50 people going to 500 people. So being part of a startup that scales very quickly, that's a very good way to learn how startups grow and be able to build up a network and reputation for doing your own startup. And that's a stepping stone. And also even if you're working at another job, I think there's lots of things you can do on part-time on the side to get to find market fit or to get customers or even letter of intent to get more validation for the product. And by the time when you're ready to quit and do it full time, then you're ready, and then investors will invest, and then you're ready to really do it full time. So I would say let's break it down into many steps. It's not just all or nothing.
I think for me, actually, I went to China in 2013. One of the biggest mistakes I made is I straight away go and rent a small office and even renovate it and straight away hire staff. End of the day, I think it's wasted a lot of money. Okay, I think that's one of the biggest issues. If I would do it again, that time, I will first go there and join the startup scene, learn from all the startup locally how they do it, how they're able to save costs. And today, actually, I'm using co-working space instead of renting my own office. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that you can learn from the local startup, how they do it there. And you spend some time to learn how they do it and how to save money. So actually, one of the biggest mistakes is you spend a lot more than actually what you expected, especially in China. There's a lot of regulation issues that you might need to deal with, employment, and such a lot of things that. So you better start learn from the local startup. Don't ask for those established business how they do it, because they will always give you advice this is how you can do it. And for startup, there's always another way to do it, which is more efficient, more cheaper, and it keeps your survivability longer until you can make profit. Right? I mean, that's my 2 cents on it.
Wait, the general question is?
It's, what are the attributes of them? You talk about successful ones, or you talk about mistakes you've made, based on your experience.
Well, I guess so. So as an entrepreneur and also startup mentors, I also mentored, I think I know probably around like 24 companies. And I think one thing that I noticed from the ones that turn out to be successful, there's almost no exception, and that is, well, the premise is that the founders, they stick it out long enough to not die. So given that they did not die, that means that they have perseverance. So given that as a premise, I think the other part is actually coachability and also the ability to process feedback. And I think that's one of the most determining sort of factors in startup founders, that a lot of people, they believe that the idea, and I think they're also, at the same time, I think mainstream entertainment, like the movie like Social Network, also mislead people into thinking that the idea actually means something. Because a lot of times if you start with an idea and you go out there and finally you realize that the reason why you thought the idea was brilliant is because you never worked in that industry before. And once you found out about it, it's like, this is the dumbest idea ever. And that's usually what happens. But and most of the founders, they die when they pivot because they don't pivot. So I think I'll probably credit that as the most important attribute.
Oh, too bad you stole mine. So, no, it's true. To be successful, you really have to be in this exact balance of being delusional enough to pursue an idea that everyone else tells you is kind of crazy, and also be optimistic enough to tough it out during the bad times. And the problem is, if you are so delusional and so able to tough it out, you might spend forever just working on a bad idea that actually will never go anywhere. And so, unfortunately, that's not the most actionable advice, except I will say that on the issue specifically of competitors and competition, I think way too many founders worry too much about the competitors. And especially they think about, what if that huge big company with all their resources and engineers and people is going to come and take my idea and crush my startup? And you'd be shocked. I don't know, people who have worked at big companies a long time shouldn't be too surprised that they can be very slow and inefficient and bureaucratic and take forever to actually adopt anything new and cutting edge. So again, I would never be that worried about competition. Most of the time, it's self-inflicted wounds that kill a startup. It's really just founder drama or infighting or never being able to crank out a product or get the engineering down. And it's very, very, very rarely the case that some huge profitable company decides to look exactly at what you're doing and copy it.
I just want to open the floor for any questions for the panelists. Does anyone have any dying questions for the panelists? Sure, go ahead.
Hey Arthur, you seem like you're in a couple startups. What's the closest to death you've come?
Wait, closest to
Like your company dying?
dying?
Yes.
Okay, so I would say the first one, it was one of those like thing. It's almost like one of those like kids that need a helmet. That's a first time entrepreneur, and you kill yourself. You're close to killing yourself probably like 5 times. So I'm trying to think of like which one is the best example. But do you have any like specific?
Yeah, I mean, because especially when you talk about perseverance, you know, I guess the B part of the question would be like, when you get to that point, what keeps you from either staying too long or from continuing to press forward, and what kept you going? Like, what kept you believing, and how did you overcome whatever that low point is? So I can't define the low point, but whatever kept you going, what was that?
Well, I would say my experience with a little bit of both. So the perseverance part and also the pivot part. So the perseverance part was the idea actually, my co-founder and I came up with the idea when I was working at the research center. So originally I was going to go into academia, and I met the researchers, and they believe our idea is impossible because they spent 15 years trying to build a product within the school, and then just listening to that, you know why it didn't work, because they tried to build it within a school with the right type of people. But then I looked at that and said, wait, the technology is possible, and your architecture is just a mess because you have all these interns and research programmers coming in and out. There's no really forward planning for the product. So we made that leap and decided to start a company and actually, instead of doing tech transfer, which we were pressured to do, but we decided to start fresh and then start building that. So that's against a lot of advices, but then we determined that was bad advice because they never done it, and these are academics telling us not to do it. So, and then the second part is that we started out doing something like in education, we had this kind of crazy idea that, oh, if we could create these AI-powered tutors, if we open up this platform and people will come here, create tutors, and they can educate each other, and then we can have this sort of iTunes type of store, and just never worked because we didn't understand education. That we go and we realize, oh, this is how much work that teachers need to do. This is how much work that teachers, how much experience it requires to become a good teacher, to really see a math problem and immediately know why the student doesn't get it and find the right analogy for that. And you can't just open up that to the internet and be like, hey, it's like Wikipedia, edit all you want, and then walk into a school and go visit and buy it. So that was the thing that actually like almost killed us. And we worked on that idea for solid like a year before we finally connected with more educators, and then eventually became a content provider.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just really quick, there's a lot of weird audio feedback, so if you're not talking, just turn off your mic, I guess. No, so your question started really with, were you ever at a point of near death? The truth is, while you're doing a startup, it almost always, on a weekly basis, feels like near death. There are just so many sad points. I'm sure Drew Houston of Dropbox, 100% sure that even on the months leading to IPO, he had many points where he thought, oh no, this is not going to work, it's going to fail. So you're always going to have times where you're feeling extremely, extremely demoralized because it's such a roller coaster. The important question is, how do you pull yourself out? Right. And this is the part of doing a startup that's kind of stacked against you, because when things are going well, you might be extremely inspired, and that might make you work a little bit harder, and you're on this high. But when things are demoralizing and things are not going well, that'll make you really stop working. But by stopping working, that almost guarantees a downward death spiral. And so are there any mental hacks you can do? And there's two that we've heard over the years that work pretty well. One is you can never really control outcomes and results, but you can control process. So one example is if you want to get a lot of press because you just released some new feature, you can't guarantee that you're going to hit 10 different news outlets and be in the top result of Google when someone searches for some word. But what you can do is say, here's our plan and our process. We're going to contact all the reporters who have ever written about us and our competitors. And as long as we do that and follow up and did it to the best of our ability, that's all we can do. So that's one trick, just focusing on the process and not always the results. But the second one, and this one I just love, is just having like a small bag of tricks of progress that you know will be kind of easy to make. So if you're an engineer, have like a little list of second priority, half a day, kind of one afternoon kind of features that you can bang out. And just by going and doing that and implementing that feature and coding it up, you might feel a little productive, and that can start a couple more days of productivity. And if you're not an engineer, then maybe you're more of a business or networking type, and maybe you've put off following up with a stack of business cards from your last networking event, such as this one. And then you just go down the list and write to all of them and see what's going on and see if there's anyone that can help you out. So that's kind of a trick. Just keep a bag of low-hanging fruit so that when you're really feeling down in the dumps, maybe you can just go and dig in that bag and get some work done. Might work.
One last question. So I know you guys have dying questions, but we really have to get to the pitches. So I saw your hand up first. I know Henry. So
Right, because I know you. Thank
yeah.
you very much.
Well, no.
Just kidding. So I think some of you might have touched this topic already, but I want to drill a little further. So I think when we talk about startups, the common theme is failures, unfortunately. When we look at Facebook, Alibaba, maybe Spotify, these are, to me, is somewhat of an illusion in the startup world. Because everyone we see, we probably see millions that we do not hear from, because those are failures. Maybe from an investor perspective, as well as from the founder's perspective, what are the common weaknesses or mistakes that maybe Seamon that you look for, they try to avoid, hopefully that when you avoid those, that will improve your portfolio performance or selection, security selection. And from the founder standpoint, what do you try to eliminate? What do you kind of see from the other guys that you try to eliminate? Hopefully that improves your overall success. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would say like not like every company like needs to raise like funding or at least like venture capital funding. So I think a lot of companies like it could be a really good profitable like cash flow business, and you could build a very good lifestyle that way, like build a very solid company, like you make like millions of revenues, and so I mean you don't have to always like try to do like a billion-dollar company and like raise like tens of millions or hundreds of millions of venture capital, billions of venture capital. I think that there's a lot of really good businesses out there that you can build, and the odds of success are a lot higher for those businesses. So you can think about what your kind of your passion is and what your advantages are, whatever advantage. And you could, especially for your first startup, you could also like shoot for something that's very manageable and something you can build and not worry about trying to raise a lot of money, but trying to get to product market fit and even get to like profitability. That could be a good like stepping stone to build a bigger company later. So
But I think I'm more like, what mistakes you trying to avoid seeing these startups you're trying to invest in?
Yeah. The mistakes is that's the thing. Like when I see these like startups, they say hey, they want to raise money, and they say that, but you're not a good candidate for venture capital. Like it's not a really big story, but you should still be successful as a startup founder. You build a very successful business, so that's what I tell them. And like you can maybe find some different sources of funding, maybe some angel investors, or get some friends and family to invest a little money if you need it, or maybe you don't even need it. You could just like bootstrap your company to a profitability instead of trying to like take hundreds of meetings with investors trying to raise money. You could like save that time and use it to build your own business. So that's a common mistake that I see.
In terms of the mistakes, you can kind of tell from the sort of the correction that the startup ecosystem here as a whole has gone through in the last couple of years. And so when I first moved to New York, so I moved here in 2011, and that's when really the New York startup scene was very small and started growing. And at that time, all the larger accelerators like YC, Techstars, they're very different from what they are today. And there's this sort of garage startup narrative, which has mostly gone away. That if you look at these more mature accelerator and seed fund like programs, they don't really invest in that type of founders anymore because they realize it's unrealistic. And then to go more specific, it's because that they make specific types of mistakes. To actually connect back to my response earlier about the mistake that we made. And then the reason why I made that mistake was because I went to a good college. I was surrounded by really smart people, and we just believed that we knew how to fix something in the world because we came from that background. And that was the old sort of garage startup kind of narrative is that someone in the early 20s, just incredibly smart, came up with an idea and changed the world. That just doesn't happen. And the more I stay in the circle, the more I realized that actually there's actually an article out there that compared entrepreneurs above and below 40 years old. That's the separation. It's about 50-50. But then the success rate of people over 40 are usually higher. And so I think those are the mistakes. I think usually is really ego-driven, just sort of ignoring all the sort of lack of experience because we just assume that we know everything. And usually when you see that, you say, okay, well, you can't convince a person to acknowledge what they don't know, but then you can wait to see if they come around, and if they don't, then that usually is something that ends up inflicting a really deep wound in the startup.
You guys want to get started on, all right, let's give a round of applause. Begin now. So if I call your team's name, please come up. If you're not around, then the next person team goes. Big Plant Inc.
Oh my gosh.
Go first. Yeah. So I will time you for 3 minutes. So the bell goes off.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know the order at all.
The judges, I will find a timer. Okay.
Do I need to use microphone?
If anyone can hear you.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right, whenever you're ready, Alex.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, okay.
No.
Hello, my name is Fang Fang. We are a big plan, and we do have a big plan. That is to change the culture of the supply chain. You may think, oh, that is a big, hairy, audacious goal. But think about how the internet and the e-commerce have changed how business runs, especially the small business in the world in the past decade or so. Why wouldn't the new technology be able to offer some better and smarter solutions for the business in the world to optimize their supply chain? Because that's the core, a big pain point for retailers, big or small, right? So the concept of a good supply chain is the same. How do you get the right amount of product produced at the right price and then get it to the consumer's hand at the right time? So that's the same goal. But big companies have the help, could get help from Oracle or SAP, but small companies never had access. Now, Big Plan provides this cloud-based solutions, affordable to the SMBs around the world to optimize, to make the informed decision and optimize their supply chain. We use 4 core technologies: big data, predictive engine, recommendation engine, and the natural language processing. So we consolidate all your data from a different sales channel, like Amazon, Taobao, right? And we find a correlation with the big data in the market, like stock exchange, weather, social media. And we can even bring you the future and tell you exactly what your sales would be in 3 months down the road, 6 months down the road, so that you can take that information back and plans more effectively and better with every step in your supply chain, right? But we don't only provide the diagnosis. We don't only tell you you're sick. We also provide the prediction or prescriptions, so that we tell you exactly what you need to do in the language that you understand. And we wanted to automate the whole process so that you don't need to waste your energy in things that are running smoothly. You just need to pay attention to the outliners, to the alerts that you truly deserve your focus, right? Down the road, we wanted to leverage the blockchain, but that's a huge topic, buzzword, and that's another story for another day. My co-founder has been the expensive consultant for Oracle's supply chain planning tool for over the decade. That's where we got our inspiration from. And myself has experience in journalism and the PR with the Element in New York office. And our advisor in Latin America has founded and co-founded 7 companies successfully and not so successfully. So together we wanted to leverage all the latest technologies in supply chain planning and make it available to the small business in US, China, and Latin America.
Great. Do you guys have any questions? If not, we can leave it for the end of all the pitches.
Any traction?
Yeah.
Traction?
We have been using, from day one, we have been using real data from our angel users. So like sales data, supply chain, suppliers data, inventories, warehouses data. So we can testing while we're building. And right now we are at the early stage where our MVP is ready, but only for the invitation basis. So that's the traction that we have with our angel users. And next milestone is to open to the public for registration. At that point, we probably would have more, traction data for you guys.
Question bar?
Hello, Sharks. Hey guys, my name is John, and I run Blush and Bar. I was able to take a $10,000 investment and create an e-commerce company that did $75,000 in revenue last month. And I want to create a software that allows others to do the same. So if you look at the typical how consumer products are made, usually you have someone in a room, a designer, someone who went to Parsons, and oh, by the way, we sell jewelry. So I'm just going to use jewelry as an example, but You could use anything. So you have someone in the room, they design it, you go to China, you source it, you bring it over here, you hold the inventory, and you hope it sells. But the most important thing you want to know is it going to sell? So we were able to invert the retail supply chain by testing products to know if they were going to sell. And we do that by paying for ads. And so we have a number of good selling products in our own store. And the interesting thing was we knew which products were going to sell before they were going to sell. And we knew that because we had certain metrics. For example, if you run a Facebook ad, you can see how many people click through. You can see the cost per click. You can see how much it costs for them to add to cart. And all that data is there for you. So what we want to do is we want to create a software that allows designers, anyone who has an idea for a consumer product, to A, put up a design, test it through paid ads, and then on our platform also source it through vetted factories.
Questions? If not, we can
Just really quick, it almost feels like two separate startups. The sourcing is huge and difficult and tough, but then this idea of kind of phantom testing for designers is also sort of itself.
Yeah. I mean, for us, the testing is the most important thing because ultimately, I think sourcing a product, even though it's really hard, is a commodity or a type of service that anyone could really do or you could outsource. But the testing is, it's not like a new idea, but I think we've proved with our own business that we can do it well. And we want to be able to offer it as a software for other people who want to try this model.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ingrid Bell. I'm a co-founder, COO of Bonbouton. So at Bonbouton, we're creating a wearable sensor for use in wearable applications for chronic disease management, athletic performance, and everyday use for just general healthier monitoring. Our first product is a smart insole that embeds our graphene sensor into standard shoe insole layers that'll monitor temperature discrepancies through the substrate that we have patented a printing method on. And the temperature discrepancies are a signal of the development of infections in diabetic patients and the development of foot ulcers. So we are targeting a very large, unfortunately a large market, both emotionally and financially. Foot ulcers actually affect about 1 in 4 diabetic patients of the 30 million in the US, 500 million worldwide. And of those 25% of the patients, about 200 amputation cases happen every day in the US. So about 60 to 70% of the patients with foot ulcers will have to get their lower limbs amputated, which is a devastating procedure. It has a 5-year mortality rate that is much worse than many cancers. And it's a procedure that costs the US healthcare system about $15 billion annually. So we are looking at creating the smart insole. It'll have a connected smartphone component that'll monitor real-time notifications that the provider will have access to and the patient and any caregivers. Our business model, we're looking right now at charging $99 per pair for the insole that'll be sold to the providers and hospitals and will be Medicare reimbursable under an existing Medicare code for up to about $300 per patient per year for 3 diabetic shoe inserts. We're looking to charge the physician for about a $10 per patient per month monitoring fee. There's a new Medicare incentive that actually incentivizes providers to remote monitor patients. And for every new patient that they monitor, they actually get a $40 credit from Medicare. So there's a built-in incentive where some of them may actually not be monitoring patients. So that's our plan right now. I recently joined the team actually just about 2 months ago. I met Lin Lee, the technical founder who's been incredible at getting grant funding. He was at ERA Accelerator last summer, and he's raised about $700,000 to date. We're looking to raise our seed round by Q4 of this year. We're hoping, my background is in regulatory strategy and digital marketing for healthcare. I have about 15 years experience in those 2 areas. We have a great new scientific advisory board member who's Dr. David Armstrong. He's kind of the lead on foot ulcers, or a very spoken person on diabetic foot ulcers. And yeah, so my focus right now is our regulatory pathway. We're looking right now at class 2 device, medical device considerations and getting FDA clearance in the next 12 months. That's our team, that's our product. I've been passionate about preventive health. I was in the pharma industry and I'm very excited and have always been interested in the more preventive side of health and wellness. I'm very happy. Lynn's wife and my mother are both diabetics and we're very committed to the product. So thank you.
Congratulations on raising $700,000 so far. How much will you eventually need before you'll not need to fundraise at all before you can skyrocket profitability?
That's a good question. So we have a very conservative financial model right now. We see revenue. We're hoping to get some revenue from our pilot. We're looking at, and I should have mentioned this in 3 minutes, but we're looking to do initial clinical effectiveness pilots with about 100 patients in the New York City area. So very, very small revenue this year, but then profitability hopefully within 24 months. But again, I'm still working through like the finances and what it's going to mean, especially with the FDA timeline, as well as the Medicare. We're looking to get potentially a new Medicare code open for smart inserts. I have some years in Washington and hopefully can still leverage those connections.
So how long does the smart insert last?
So right now, the battery life will be probably no more than 6 months. So the kind of standard model of about 3 pairs per year per patient is what we are going to align to. There won't be an expectation for longer than 6 months.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So Mante's going to be a little bit out of order, but he needs to leave a little earlier too, so I want him to finish. Oh, no, you might stay longer now? Okay. Well, then I kind of went in order. Yeah, sorry about it. I know you had events earlier, so China American Radio? Yep, go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Cobb, hello everybody. China American Radio, a little bit about me, first of all, is I've been a radio broadcaster for over 50 years. A couple of years ago, I retired from Sirius XM, satellite radio, you probably heard of them. And I was looking around for something to do, and I realized that the one thing that was missing on the radio broadcasting landscape was Chinese music. Not the guy in the subway that plays the air hoop and collects dollars, but regular Chinese pop music. So I met a friend of mine that was working at the PRC consulate here in New York about 10 years ago. And we decided we were going to go into some kind of a project that would bring the huge, burgeoning pop Chinese scene into the American media marketplace. But first I wanted to figure out, well, who's doing this? Anybody doing this at all? Well, no. So I looked at Sirius XM where I was working, and they have 200 plus channels, not one Chinese channel. I looked at Cumulus Radio. They own 485 radio stations, even in big markets like San Francisco and Portland and Boston. Do they have any Chinese radio stations? No, not one. I looked at iHeartRadio. We've ordered iHeartRadio, iHeartMedia. They have over 850 radio stations in cities like Portland and San Francisco. Do they have any Chinese radio stations? No, not one. But if you go to China or Taiwan or anywhere in between where there's a Chinese pop music scene, you'll go out to KTV. Your friends are going to take you out to the karaoke club. That's what you're going to do. You're going to sing along. You're going to want to go to Taipei and you want to hear Soda Green or Jay Chow or Mayday. Or you want to go to Hong Kong and you want to hear somebody like Eason Chan or go to a concert. So what we decided to do, and we did this 10 years ago, is to start an internet radio station, because nobody on AM or FM is doing this, or satellite. And we also looked at the marketplace, and Nielsen, the TV ratings people, they told us that the Chinese American spends 20% more time on their device, and this is no secret, than the general population, because they cannot get their news, information, and entertainment from any other mainstream media course. So what we decided to do was create an internet radio station, and also a series of proprietary phone apps, and we created China America Radio, which is a mix of Mandarin and Cantonese pop music. It's hosted in English because most of our listeners are American Chinese. There are 3.8 million Chinese Americans in the United States. 2.2 million of those people were born in China. So we know there's already a liaison, there's already a contact, there's already a connection back and forth between China and the US. So we hear all these companies talking about wanting to advertise themselves, Chinese companies wanting to break into the US market, American companies wanting to break into the Chinese market. How do you do that without a media outlet that can tell your story? We are commercially sponsored. We sell advertising on China America Radio to companies who want people like you and you and you and you, no matter what side of the Pacific you live on. So what we've done with China America Radio is it's free. It doesn't cost anything. And you can get it on your phone app. You can listen on any computer. And we have advertising packages for all of your companies, no matter how small or how large. If you have any questions, you check with me afterwards. Thank you.
Have you launched the channel yet?
Pardon?
Have you launched the?
It's been on for 10 years.
Oh,
But we've only taken it to the advertising market within the past 2. Because we wanted to do our one sheet, wanted to build relationships in the community so people would trust us. And that's what we've done.
So what's the traction? How many?
Well, the radio ratings companies don't measure internet radio, but we use Google Analytics and Quantcast, and they can tell us where the listeners are and how old they are. Plus, because we're online, most radio measurement in the past has always been market by market. They'll measure New York, Seattle, whatever, they measure all those markets one by one. Well, when you have a media that reaches everybody simultaneously, that breaks the whole mold of how you measure your listenership. Besides that, we don't care how, where people listen. All right?
Do you have a daily active number you can share?
Well, we have over 40 different internet radio directory companies, like TuneIn, that now take a feed from our radio station. We have global distribution. It's everywhere. It's not a body count because in the United States, 1.2% of the population is Chinese, so it would look tiny compared to the numbers for the white Americans, Hispanic Americans, African Americans. So we don't even play the numbers game. But if you want the Chinese consumer, you want to go someplace where there's no overkill, it's inexpensive, and that's exactly what you're going to get.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, hello everybody. My name is, is it on? Can you hear me guys? Yeah? So my name is Colin, and I'm originally from Ireland, but I've spent about 15 years in China as a reporter. I work for organizations such as the Wall Street Journal and the Far Eastern Economic Review. So most recently I was working with Sixth Tone, which is an English language publication out of Shanghai, and it's owned by Pengpai, which is a big Chinese media company. So when I was on assignment for Sixth Tone last year, I got to travel across China from the southwest, Yunnan province, right up to Heilongjiang. It was a trip of 5,000 kilometers. It took 5.5 weeks, and we did it in an SUV. And along the way, we met lots and lots of really fascinating people, and they shared their stories with us, including garlic farmers in Yunnan who were earning a very small wage every day. And even that wage was under threat because of new anti-pollution laws. So why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because while I was traveling along this imaginary line, which is called the Hu Line, it occurred to me that the China story is not being told well. Or if it is being told, it's being told by people who are doing so from an outsider's perspective. China Narrative, basically, it wants to change that. We want to change how stories are told from China. But we also want to enable people in China to tell their own stories in English. So it's a combination of a media and an education platform. So we will have 3 different types of products and services. Obviously, we will have to take a step-by-step approach and roll out according to our resources. But the first step will be to focus on media content. So for example, today I launched the first issue of the China Narrative newsletter. And one of the ways we're going to tap China stories is through the boom in non-fiction writing that's happening right now in China. I'm sure many of you are aware that there's many fascinating stories that are in Chinese on these non-fiction platforms. Unfortunately, they're not getting to the rest of the world. So I want to change that. We want to change that. We want to bring these non-fiction stories. We want to bring them to the Western audiences. On the other hand, there's lots of great non-fiction in the US, which could serve as a template or a way of informing Chinese people about alternative storytelling techniques. So we want to partner. We already are in talks with partnering with an award-winning US non-fiction website, and we will take their stories, translate them into Chinese, and distribute them through WeChat, which will be based on a advertising model. And the last part, which is the most important part, is the education training component of China narrative. So we don't want to stop just telling China stories. We want to create an ecosystem that allows Chinese people to tell their own stories. And basically, this means an education academy, China Narrative Academy. For that, we will be partnering with education partners in China. I'm out of time, so...
Yeah, all right. Next questions, we will move on. We have a lot to get through. Hot light power. Really stick to 3 minutes, guys. I give everyone a fair... Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Schreiber, and I am the co-founder...
Use the mic, please. Thanks.
My name is Nicholas Schreiber, and I am the co-founder and CTO of Hotlight Power, a city bike for smartphone charging. So imagine that you're meeting a friend after work. Either you're meeting them at a bar, a restaurant, or maybe at a meetup like this, and you're trying to connect with people, and you're trying to see what the agenda is, and you look down at your phone, and you realize that your phone's at 30%. And you start to get this anxiety. You start to get this fear that your phone's not going to last the rest of the night. And then you realize, oh wait, I have a cable. Then you look for an outlet and you can't find an outlet. Then you think, maybe I can ask the bartender, or I can ask someone here, but that's going to annoy someone. Then you remember, oh, I have a battery pack, but it's not charged or it's at home. And finally, you see something on the wall, which is a locker that you can put your phone in, but that sort of reduces the point of having a mobile phone. So that sounds like maybe something you're familiar with. But it's actually very familiar to a lot of people. Everyone in America basically at this point has a smartphone. And from surveys we've seen that about half of people with a smartphone deal with this on a weekly basis. And if you isolate it to 18 to 50 in the urban areas, that's a market of about 70 million people. So that's what we're trying to address, this issue of phone anxiety and this issue of your phone dying. So what we have is a network of charge sharing with, through Hotlight Power that partners with restaurants, bars, and cafes, and we install a vending machine that dispenses a battery pack, this one here, that has both an Apple and micro USB cable built in. You rent it, plug it into your phone, charge your phone, take it with you, and when you're done, drop it off at any hub in the network. So it's like that city bike, but for smartphone charging. We have it for at $3 for 24 hours right now, and we've been live since the end of 2016. In that time, in just 13 locations, we have about $17,000 in revenue and thousands of rentals. From this point, we're looking to continue to expand the network. We are working with our partners in Asia to build the next version of our product, which is going to be even more robust, have higher capacity, and add additional features. From there, we're looking to expand into the sports market, as well as the transit market and the live music venue, where we'll have higher margins and be able to expand quickly throughout the United States. So we're here to provide basically smartphone charging that means that you no longer have to worry about your phone's battery life.
I guess you have a way to protect your IP or grow this into a monopoly later on?
Okay, so we are fortunately having a first mover advantage on this. The current iteration has some unique things about it. We did file provisionally a patent, but it wasn't super defensible. For the next machine that we're building, we are either using we're either going to have patent or since we're maintaining and controlling an entire network, keeping it as a trade secret since we operate the entire network. And that is proprietary and developed in-house.
Is there any advertising angle here?
Right. It's a very, very good option. If you're familiar with City Bike, the company isn't actually City Bike, it's Motivate, and City Bike bought our sponsorship. So we see a very good opportunity once we have an established network for that sponsorship. Additionally, our kiosks are out-of-home advertising that a lot of advertisers can't get to. Once we have an established network, it's a very good opportunity for out-of-home advertising.
Thank you. So it seems like him and Arthur actually know each other.
Yeah, I used to work for Arthur, believe it or not. We'll see how things show up, Arthur. All right, you guys hear me? Yeah. All right, cool. So, my name is Krols Mikael, and I'm co-founder of Inventory Connection, where we help our clients sell more and count less. Now, when was the last time you were in the supermarket and found every single item on your shopping list? Turns out there's a 57% chance that at least one of those items will be out of stock. So as a customer, you have two options. Substitute for an alternative product, or go somewhere else. So while this is an inconvenience for you, the customer, for the $800 billion supermarket industry and their vendors, this is a huge problem. Simply put, vendors are disconnected from their supermarkets. Current solutions such as computer-generated order systems or custom portals are inaccurate and difficult to understand. So sales representatives like my father, who are employed by Frito-Lay, actually manually count the inventory in their stores, spending upwards of 45 minutes per store, 4 stores a day, 365 days a year. Inventory Connection solves this problem by giving sales reps a tablet with a web application on it, which allows them to view real-time inventory, point of sales analytics, and demand forecasts to better stock their inventory. So now my dad knows his Walmart ran out of Doritos and his Target ran out of Fritos and can better stock his shelf and adjust his order for the next delivery instead of showing up to the store and being like, oh well. And we've proven our system works. In our current pilot, we launched with a large regional retailer and vendor, and in the first 8 weeks, we're able to reduce out of stocks by 54% while reducing time spent ordering by 65%. With these results, we've expanded conversations with 3 large regional retailers and 5 large vendors, a $7 million opportunity. At the end of the day, everybody wins. Supermarkets increase their sales, vendors operate more efficiently, and customers leave with the products they want. So who is ready to help us sell more and count less? Thank you.
Questions from the judges? If not.
I think Arthur has to ask you later.
Yeah, Arthur.
Just wondering, do you have more like traction numbers?
Yeah, so to give you background, we started with 1 independent store and 1 sales representative. Once we proved the pilot out, we expanded to a large regional retailer with that same vendor in 2 stores. The results went well, so we went with that same vendor in 8 stores. Assuming that goes up well, we'll go full scale with that retailer. And then the 3 retailers as a whole are about 400 locations, and the 5 vendors are in all of those. So that's kind of where we're at today, is getting those pilots at the same scale started and expanding. And assuming that goes well, it's a virtuous cycle, right? So the vendors benefit because they want to take it to more retailers, and the retailers want to get all their vendors on this better and stuff. Does that make sense?
Thank you. China?
Oh,
Got it.
Good evening. I'm Dale Ying. I'm the founder of NoChina.info. My partner, Anthony Evans, is here too. We have a mission to facilitate the international communication exchange between the people with their own native languages. So we would like to call NoChina.info is a multi-language communications platform. Why? As long as we have not rebuilt the Tower of Babel, there are always problems, issues in human communications, especially in international exchanges. because people are speaking they like to speak their own native languages. As a solution, China.info allow the native Chinese speakers to provide answers to the questions by the non-Chinese speakers with their own language. So far you will see like a very simple question by every how many hours we'll walk through the Great Wall in Beijing if I'm the first visitor. You always see one English speaker answer a question, then the other English speakers answer the questions. Now we let native Chinese speakers answer questions regarding China and beyond. So they can contribute. So how about the language? How about the people? They know the language. They have contributed to the edition of the language translations. The platform they use state-of-the-art AR language translations. So how is the market? With the various market strategy, we expect 1% of 300 million Americans and 1% out of 1.4 billion Chinese people will become the revenue user within the first year of launch. By the way, Chinese Q&A answer, the website Zhihu has 17 million of May 2015. This is our business model. One more thing. No China.info is available now. No word.net is on the way. We are doing something new, very new. I would like to call it Communications 2.0. Thank you.
Why you need to have answer in Chinese? I mean, if let's say you understand Chinese, why you can ask in Chinese? Why you have to ask in English and then expect the answer in Chinese?
Okay, yeah. When I was many years ago, like say 18 years ago, when I was studying the business school in New York, I can tell, let's say professor has questions. The people with language advantage, so they raise a hand and answer the question. But I can tell some of my friends from the country, let's say from China, from Japan, I can tell they knew the answer, but they hesitate to do that because the language barriers there. So now if you answer, let's say you answer a question about China or beyond, we believe people know both the question and answer best. They can provide the best answers to those questions in terms of contents, not in terms of the language capacity. So we will let people with little foreign language capacity to join communication platforms. That's our logic. That's our idea for this project.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Familiar face.
All right. Good evening. My name is Shuo. I am the CEO and founder of Mira. At Mira, we are reinventing life insurance using technology and big data, and we uniquely serve the higher risk population. In the US, close to half the population is deemed to be higher risk by insurance companies, either because they're older, they smoke, they're overweight, or have a medical condition. For this population, they'll pay 3 to 7 times higher prices for their insurance. They have to complete a 30-page paper application, and the underwriting process will take over 2 months. As a result, there currently exists a $16 trillion coverage gap, defined as people who want to get life insurance but cannot afford it or think the process is too difficult. At Mira, we built a technology-enabled online buying process, identified and built integrations into over 80 new digital data sources, including medical, wearables, financial, and behavioral data, and enrich and transform this data in a way to make it useful for life insurance underwriting. This means we know much more about our customer base and can segment and identify and sell to the better high risks instead of the worse high risks. We're already in the market selling for 18 insurance companies, including AIG, Prudential, and Transamerica. In the past 3 months, we have processed over 1,000 applications. Because of our unique technology and data, we were able to build a partnership with Munich Re, which is the world's leading reinsurance company. And they've already provided to us $500 million worth of balance sheet capacity. And in July, out of the tens of thousands of agencies out there, we will become the first and only one that can offer lower prices for diabetes customers using our new data. In terms of our team background, I actually started my career on Wall Street. I was at Goldman Sachs in their high-risk investing and lending group, and then returned to Wharton Business School, where I co-founded my first company, ModernLend, which uses technology and big data for high-risk credit issuance and lending. My co-founder and CTO, Walter Woodall, has experience in computer science and data science, and formerly worked in big data analytics at Capital One. And our head of business development, Jim Kilduff, has over 35 years of industry experience and has tremendous relationships in the industry. We're supported by New York, Silicon Valley, and Asia investors, and our portfolio company in 500 Startup Accelerator. And again, my name is Shua, CEO of Mira. We are reinventing life insurance for the higher risk population. Thank you.
Other than the data, which is hugely important for insurance, is there anything that'll let you continue the monopoly, protect your IP, and you grow as some members of your adventure?
So the biggest problem in insurance that needs to be solved, which we are solving, is how do you actually sell to people in a much faster way in an easier online process. As a distribution company, we are able to, using our data integrations, we're able to
You're not a broker, right? You're a partner in brokers.
We are an online broker.
You are the broker, right?
We're actually what's called a managing general underwriter, which means we can sell direct to consumer as well as through downstream brokers, and we have the authority to do underwriting for case review. Thanks.
Thank you. Note set? Okay, next. Apology?
Yo, hi everybody. Hi. So we're creating the fastest way for people to create their own music and share it. So while I'm talking to you, I'm creating a beat and share it on social media. So you make a little piece of music in 10 seconds, you add some video to it, put some effects, and post it on your social media, because today it's all about creating your own content. And young people are only consuming and creating their own content, but there's no really simple and intuitive way for them to make their own music. Now, music has been a centerpiece of human expression since already like before we invented language. What we're doing is we're making it the most direct way for people to create their own music. Now, my background is that I've been a music producer for over 18 years, and I was making music with computers, but it never really allowed me to create something intuitively and bring it out of my hands in the most fun and intuitive way, like a jazz musician can do with a piano. So I decided to create my own tools, and for the past 10 years, I've been creating all sorts of techniques that I use for my live shows. I'm traveling all around Europe and in Israel and playing shows. I'm from Israel. So I create my own tools, my own instruments, and one day I thought, okay, what can we do with this rectangle everybody's got in their pocket? And I came across this method that was so mind-blowing for me as a creative that I thought, okay, there is a product here. I've tested it in festivals. I saw 5-year-olds and grandparents jamming together and creating music without any background in music. And I convinced 3 other people to join me full-time for over a year. We've been working on a very, very early prototype just to test something out in the market, and we've been getting amazing feedback. And basically, I'm here to almost closing the angel round. We have already like 90,000 euros committed, and we are looking to raise another 20 from angels right now, and that's what I'm here for. What is?
Stupid question. I didn't actually catch what it does.
So you make your own music in 10 seconds? I'll show it to you.
Okay, so it's an app. It's an app.
It's an app, yeah. The business model.
Okay.
How you make money? So how you make money is that we are basically a marketplace for samples. Today it's all about electronic music. It's taking over the world. Hip hop and electronic music is everywhere. And we allow musicians, DJs, brands to create jam packs. Jam pack is a collection of sounds that users can use to create their own content. So on one side, we sell these samples, right? Like this bass drum, this drum kit. We can have an infinite amount of jam packs. And on the other side, we can also license user-generated content. So I made this kind of beat. Let's say on our platform, we're creating like an Instagram for beat making, all right? Let's say on our platform, this beat gets like 1 million views. We can advertise there, we can license that music to use somewhere else. There's a lot of different possibilities, but our main business model is like a marketplace for sampling.
No? All right. Next company, rent or buy. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Bo Chin, and I'm the co-founder of Rent and Buy. So buying a home for most people is probably one of the biggest and hardest decisions that they have to make in their life. The mission of Rent or Buy is we want to help facilitate this decision because it's so important. So what we built is an application that we want to that they would take with them to house showing with realtors where it will actually give them accurate on-the-spot house pricing that's based on their personalized information. And this is accomplished by our housing pricing algorithm, which we actually developed. So there's currently a sample app with the algorithm that we're testing in prototype. And we're hoping to get feedback and see what the users say. So our market is actually pretty huge because not only are we targeting just like you and me who might think about buying a house, we actually, our marketing also include realtors as an asset when they take their client out, real estate investment companies for their probability analysis, and also possibly even like the government for their data sampling. And even tonight when I came to this event, I actually found that there's another market that completely escaped me, the Chinese community. It's, Chinese people, there's a lot of Chinese people right now trying to come to America to buy real estate here. It's a huge booming business. So and a bit of background about me and my partner. So I'm a master in computer science and my partner is a PhD in finance. We actually just started, so it's very exciting. But yeah, that's it.
So is your algorithm going to do a better job than realtors who are looking at housing all day long?
So yes, something I forgot to mention actually is some of our key competitors, such as Zillow or even Trulia. These are huge names, right? What they focus on is actually house listing and searching, whereas we want to focus on a really niche spot in this market, and that is helping the customer, helping them make that decision. And the reason we found this out is because we've been looking at houses, and when we used their app, it wasn't even helpful to us. And when we look at the other people who use their houses, they weren't opening apps either. There's a pain in the market where people don't have like an app that they go to say, is this house worth buying?
So it's not the house price you're negotiating, it's whether you should rent or buy?
Yeah, so as a simple example, let's say you're thinking about it. I'm currently renting, I'm thinking about buying a house. The first question that comes to your mind is, well, is it worth it to rent or is it worth it to buy? Because remember, buying is a huge investment, but renting, you're throwing money down the drain. And our algorithm, the main function is to give you a result, but it takes in a lot of different factors that are not found elsewhere to kind of calculate what the equivalent rent is for your house.
So your target users are people who need housing and are not yet sure if they want to buy right now or rent.
Exactly.
They're completely indifferent between the two.
Right, exactly.
Hello. So I am the founder of Renta.com. Renta allows you to rent out or request any good or service. So similar to Airbnb, if you have a speaker, projector, lawnmower in your home, you can list that and rent that out at a price of your choosing. And similar to Uber, say you're at this event and the camera breaks, or the gentleman before me, his speaker breaks, you can say, hey, I need a speaker. The idea is peer-to-peer rentals of any type of good or service that people need. My background, I'm a professor of geography and political science at the College of Staten Island for the City University of New York. In the world, I see two major issues. On the environmental side, too much waste and consumption. We just are used to buying things almost like robots, and the line from Fight Club, we buy things that we don't need to impress people that we don't even like. Right? And we're not aware of doing this, but we just continue to do this. And especially in New York City, I see a lot of people that want to be super environmental, but then I also see them just getting Amazon packages in their house every single day, and it's kind of hypocritical. So I was against that. The other thing that we see is economic issues, right? So many people don't have enough money. And in New York City, we also don't have enough space. So I wanted to create a way where people could start earning income with the things that they already have and the knowledge that they already know. At the moment, about 40% of Americans are freelancers, and they think in the next 10 years, it's going to be about 55%. And so the teacher in me sees students all the time that say, hey, I'm interested in getting into fashion. Okay, so what have you done so far? And they're like, well, I follow people on Instagram that are like, do something else, right? So I want them to list themselves as, hey, I can be a personal shopper. Maybe there's some 40-year-old guy that just recently divorced that has no idea how to dress himself, and maybe he will pay this person $100 to go to the mall with them and pick out certain clothes. Now this person does this 10, 12 times, now they have a portfolio. Maybe they can figure out what they want to do. The idea is to earn extra income. This might not be like Uber where you're going to be able to live your entire life, but it will be enough money where maybe you can have some date income. Or if you're a family, some extra money to give your kids some of the things that they want. We have a team here in-house. We have a developer, front-end developer, back-end developer, Android. Our team is very diverse, hailing from parts of China, the Bronx, Georgia, female, male-led. I truthfully don't know anything about tech. I am more coming at this angle philosophically. I saw companies like Uber and Airbnb say things like they were revolutionary, and they were. But then you also have companies like Handy and TaskRabbit that are also taking the sharing economy mentality. And then they sell off to IKEA. Or they decide to become automated. And so really people that are joining these programs are going to lose their jobs and opportunities to make money in the future. And I also don't think they were that revolutionary because Couchsurfing.com already existed and Craigslist already existed. And what they did was they just made it in a beautiful interface, and they're like, oh, Instacart is amazing, you get food delivered to your house. Okay, well, when I lived 10 years ago in Bay Ridge, I could get food delivered to my house. I just had to call the associate and talk to the gentleman that worked there. What we're missing now is that type of interconnection. And I think with Renta, you'll be renting things from people that are local to you. So the money will stay local.
The last two, we care.
Hi everyone, my name is Yuko. I'm a grad student here in New York, gonna graduate this weekend actually. So I want to present my business. I actually haven't started, but it's called Giving Wedding. Giving Wedding uses people's life event to rebuild social fabric of Japan. I'm from Japan, and I'll tell you how it works. So imagine I'm getting married, and you're invited to my wedding. In Japan, you have to pay cash $300 minimum in order to attend my wedding. And then after I finish my ceremony, reception, and when you leave, I hand you this physical gift, which is around 20% of what you paid me. So it's around, if you pay $300, it's around $50. Sadly, the things you get as a wedding return gift is mostly kind of useless. And 80% of the Japanese said they've received something useless for wedding return gift. It's usually like a plate or a glass, or it's not useless, but if you don't like the design, you're never going to use it. So giving wedding channels the money that is otherwise used for useless gifts to nonprofits that the bride and groom care about. So this is how it works. So we have two unique selling points. Firstly, we provide online customizable online catalog where you can choose a physical gift and a nonprofit that we care about. Secondly, we're going to use AI and big data to split gift options that is perfect for the wedding attendees. Well, I'm sure everyone has given a gift before to your wife, your partner, to your friends. Well, it's actually kind of difficult to select the perfect gift. It is hard to select those gifts, and we care. We changed our company name recently. Given wedding, we put the bride and groom inputs the information of the attendees, like gender and age, and the system automatically spits out a gift option, nonprofit and gift, so it facilitates your gift selection. So about the market size, the market size of wedding return gift in Japan is 1.5 billion. And we also have the same system for funerals, actually. We give money to attend smaller than the wedding, we give money to attend the funeral, and you receive a physical gift. And that market is 1.6 billion. We're planning on taking a service fee from the user, and that is how we're going to make money. And our initial one-time investment is 60K, and planning on break in 3 years. Thank you.
Questions, we'll move on to our last company, Wax.
Hey everybody, happy to be last, I guess. And then, I'm going to stand over here so I can see the panel and everybody here. So a little bit about me. My name is John Beatty. I'm the CEO of Wax Tech, co-founder. And I guess I'll tell you a story how we started. So I went to music school with my co-founder Jamal. We graduated with our bachelor's, and he went on to go get a computer science degree. And I went on to become a Grammy nominee, and I play saxophone, a jazz musician. And years later, I went back to Jamal and said, yo, it would be really dope if we could get on stage and I could play my saxophone and fire could come out of the bell. How can we, I think I know how we can make that happen. I think if we could localize sound in 3 dimensions, we knew where sound was occurring in relationship to the display, we could make that happen. And Jamal looked at me and goes, hell no, that's not possible. And Jamal's like, well, let me look at some stuff. So he started researching, and we found a bunch of beamforming algorithms, which are mostly, they're all 2-dimensional. That's just the way that the market works. So people talk to things, microphones listen in that direction like an echo. And so we decided, hey, let's put it in 3 dimensions because we needed it. In order to make the visuals look right on stage, you had to get in 3 dimensions. Then we're like, yo, now that we know how to do this in 3 dimensions, Jamal figured it out. What if we could talk to the TV screen and have the face look back at us? What if you and I could stand in front of the screen and we could just talk to it and he could look at me and he could look at him? And we said, yeah, that's cool. Somebody's had to have done this before. So we started filing patents. We got 3 grants in America. We got 1 in China. We got 1 in Europe. And we said, man, this is pretty dope. Now, what do we do with this? And so it's become our goal since through this process, AI has grown considerably with Echoes and Alexas and Google Homes. We believe that AI is going to have a face. It's going to be customized. It's going to be in the home and out of the home. With 3 dimensions, we know how far the speaker is from the screen. So if you're out of the home, we can ignore sound that's not within a certain space from the screen. And so right now we are currently working on finishing the algorithm and trying to come up with a way to make it easy for artificial intelligence to be put at the back of it, and also programming, breaking down this 3rd dimension and make the stuff behind the screen the same metrics as the stuff outside of the screen. So that's where we're currently at. And yeah, that's the goal here.
What's the use case?
So the use case would be, for instance, we believe that has a lot of implications for education. So for instance, like something like what you're working on with the children, having an AI power something that's teaching kids math, and if multiple ones are using voice, because voice is the most natural way that humans communicate with them. It's the most efficient way that we communicate with one another. And firmly believe that that's the way we will be talking to our computers most of the time. Having multiple kids in front of a screen sharing that experience is going to be to get that reciprocity, the same way that when I speak to you, you give me eye contact. That's what we want to get to AI. So when you speak to it, the image on the screen can look back at them and give them that.
So what was the first claim on your patent?
The first claim on our first patent, I can't read it verbatim, but it has to do with summarizing, using any type of display or projection to reveal the indicia of sound.
Fully awarded?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, all right, and that's our last question. Time for the judges to deliberate, so we're open this session to networking, and there's some water and some